Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Developmental right here on TMPT and HMG. I am your host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip. And of course, joining me is the hacker himself, Bin Hamin. Ben, welcome back into Developmental.
It's good to be back with you, man. And I was excited about today. Our guest was able to get here to join us. One of my best friends and a great co-host, great in-ring talent, great promoter. He's worn every hat there is, from TV champ to tag team championship multiple times at OVW. He is a doctor of physical therapy. I mean, he's just done all the work that needs to be done to make yourself a well-rounded human being, man. Much more well-rounded than I am, Paz. A lot of edges on me still, but I'm glad to be back with you here for Developmental. I'm talking about none other than the Mama Man Beast. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you guys too. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. I feel like having pretty much worn every hat as you can wear in the developmental system, that hopefully I can provide some insight into what you guys are talking about. Sometimes I joke and say, I know a little bit of everything, but master of none. But I like to think at least I've gotten a little bit of insight into just about every piece that you can think of as it relates to running a developmental promotion. So I'm excited that you all asked me, and looking forward to sitting down with you guys and chatting.
There's no way we can cover it all with you in one show and things like that. So we've been having some fun, just kind of taking small looks at different things. But go ahead, Paz.
I was going to say 5-time OVW Southern Tag Team Champion, 2-time OVW Television Champion. When you first got into OVW, what year was it, and who was in charge? Not just the Danny Davis part, but who was kind of running things?
I came in 2004. At that time, the guy that ran the beginners class was Mike Mondo, or Mikey from the Spirit Squad. He had just recently taken over from Nick Dinsmore, or Eugene, who was going on and doing more road dates with WWE and wasn't able to keep up with the beginners class schedule. At that time, Rip Rogers taught the quote-unquote advanced class, and Jim Cornette was actually the man that was really, I guess, in charge of the booking and the writing situation. There were other guys underneath that helped get the venues for the house shows. And obviously Danny was the true owner of everything, but it was really Jim Cornette at that time that was kind of running the show, so to speak.
With Cornette, is he, as people say, he's crazy. He runs, does he run a tight ship? Is he tough on the guys?
I would say so. And I'm maybe one of the few people that I feel I can see why some people get upset with his opinions on things. That being said, at least from the way I saw him run things at OVW, from that perspective only, I thought he did a great job running things. And I felt because he ran a tight ship, people were more willing to do what they were supposed to do without giving any lip about it. Because if you wanted to give lip about it, then even if you felt you were in the right, you were going to have to get into it with Jim Cornette about it. So I think a lot of people or just rather, I'll just do the thing they told me to do rather than fight with Jim Cornette. That doesn't sound like a fun day to me. And he did. One of the first things I saw was actually Jim Cornette kicking out a guy from the beginners class because he was talking to some fans outside of the venue, and he thought it was a good idea to let them know what was going to happen on the show that night. That was not a good idea. So Jim Cornette.
That was not.
not a good idea if you were thinking to do that. So not only did he immediately eject him and left the guy in tears, he turned to all of us and said, and if any of you motherfuckers think that you're going to run my fucking show and go stooge off what we're going to fucking do, I am going to kick your ass. And if I can't kick your ass, then I'll fucking shoot you. And that's what I hope I can cuss. Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
That's what he said. And that was probably month 1 into my OVW experience. And I knew, unless I think literally my life is in danger, I'm probably just going to shut the fuck up and do whatever this guy tells me. Because I don't want that to happen to me.
He's got some personality on him for sure. But who would you reveal who it was that is kind of giving away information? Or do you even remember who it was that was giving away this show?
Oh, I don't remember his name. He ever went on to anything. I know afterwards he went on to wrestle in some Kentucky indies, and I honestly don't remember his name. I know he did like a year of indies, and then he just disappeared. So it wouldn't be anybody of note, at least in the wrestling world. Who knows? Maybe he's a CEO and a billionaire somewhere else, and I've totally forgotten. And damn, I should have kept in touch. But as far as I know, I don't think he ever went on to any grandeur, at least in wrestling he did.
Just other quick backstory for you guys who have been following our developmental series. We talked about Adam Revolver, aka Power. Him
Well,
and
you talked to him?
yeah.
You had him on before me?
That's it, man. That was just scheduled.
Dude.
But Dr. Ted is his tag team partner of over 15 years. So in multiple different incarnations of the Mobile Homers and also the Elite as well. So 2 great episodes, not just now, but go back and rewatch that with Adam Revolver and compare perspectives of the Jim Cornette time. I think it's a good lineup that way. Go ahead,
Absolutely. We'll have to at some point have us both on and talk some shit. That way y'all can just lay out and listen to us bitch at each other for an hour about how it was back in the day.
I love it. Not to jump too far ahead, but and Boz, you can take it wherever you want. But one thing that I don't know if you knew about this, JP, is when I talked about those amateur shows that we did right before Derby City Wrestling.
Yep.
But one of the very first big feuds, and I get this a lot running a media company where guys want you to bury other thing, and we do shit with castrating the marks, and it's whatever because a lot of them deserve just to get fucking ridiculed. But a lot of people will go in on Brian Alvarez, and I always kind of go to bat for him, man, to be honest with you. There's not to say there isn't some him and Meltzer crossover of like things that make me roll my eyes, but he had a big feud with Dr. Ted at OVW. Promo war back and forth to where he came and had a huge match on the early Derby City Wrestling payoff shows. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not, but that's why I always give Brian Chico Alvarez a little bit more respect than I do everybody else, because I've seen what he can do, which is just shut up and let Ted lead you, and not a lot of people can do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that he was
certainly.
there.
And although I have to say that, in my opinion, the feud is still not over because we fought the one time he won, and I think now that in the next couple months I'm going to be running my own wrestling promotion, Dream Pro, here in Louisville. We might have to revisit that, but we'll see. But I have to say, working with Ron Alvarez in the ring, believe it or not, if you want to believe me or not, he was one of the easiest people I've ever had to work in the ring. He was solid. He really was.
Wow, that is kind of surprising. I didn't even realize he was a part of Derby City all the way back then.
Well, how it works is the connection is Rip Rogers and Buddy Wayne, who's passed away, 2 best friends together, and Brian trained with Buddy Wayne, and they started Rip wanted to start a coast-to-coast promo war between Ted. When I say the sons of Rip and daughters of Rip, there's probably about a handful of a dozen that Rip really considers like his inner circle core projects, where he's going to turn them into these wrestling psychopaths that are better than anybody else on the planet. Like, and it doesn't like everything else like that you see on TV couldn't compare to what they can do. I mean, when Rip wants people to pull an hour Broadway, it's Dr. Ted, it's Revolver.
10 years ago, to be fair.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It was multiple times. So and there's other guys who can do it, but that's why he wants to. Rip does a lot of those FU things where it's like, oh, Chico just runs the sheets now. He's trained by Buddy Wayne. Now I'll put him against my best promo guy. And you guys did what, about 8 weeks of promos back, eight weeks of promos back and forth, maybe even longer.
I actually want to say, I think it was closer to about 16 weeks because it was. I think the actual match happened on episode 20 of DCW, and it started early on in DCW because I just walked out and Rip told me to just rip Brian Alvarez and tell him that he was trash for saying I was skinny and didn't wrestle that good. And that's literally how it started. And then just each week got more and more crazy as Rip just had me do ridiculous things like go out and hold a cardboard sign and say I was opponentless, need help, and then have people clean their cars to swipe one squeegee across the windshield and be like, all right, that'll be $20. And they're like, what the fuck? It was just ridiculous.
What's Rip like? Ted, I know you're still working with him with HMG and the FR podcast, but what's he like as a trainer? Because it always seems like he's a bit of a hard ass. He's very tough on the guys. He's old school to the bone. What's Rip like?
Rip is very unfiltered, but here's the thing. If you aren't any good, you probably won't hear much from Rip at all. He'll probably be actually very polite and quiet and otherwise not intervening versus the people that he really wants to push are the people, unfortunately, as Pop's not going to attest to, that he screams at and cusses out the most. But I think there's something to that, because when finally you have a match and Rip doesn't say shit about it, then it's like, okay, I finally achieved something because he didn't rip me apart afterwards. And you have to set yourself up to achieve a certain level of, I guess, work ethic in the ring, because anything less you're going to get called out on, whether a punch looked sloppy or you didn't post right on a slam, but anything at any point during what we would do in the ring at practice. And he did this to the guys under contract too. If you fucked up at any point, he would ring the bell and say, get the fuck out of the ring. And then he would have someone else get in the ring and say, show them how to do it right. And essentially, so you did not want to get dinged, because it was embarrassing to be in the middle of a match and have the bell ring and be told to get the fuck out. Nobody likes that. It's very, I don't know, just it puts a spotlight on you, and not in a good way, in front of all of your colleagues. And that's certainly something that you didn't want. So I think, to a degree, and I almost think it's really a kind of an ingenious thing, because you start building in-class competition between each other, because you wanted to be the match in class that never got dinged. You wanted to get from the first bell to the ending bell without Rip ringing it and say, that was fucking stupid what you just did. And I think to be able to try to work at that level, I don't think it's a thing that's really taught in that way anymore, if I'm being honest.
I don't want you to undersell it, because I talked a little bit about this on our last show. That pressure in class, people don't know, like, what imagine you look around, and when we say in class, you're hearing it from us right now, but there's Ryback, there's EC3, there's Rick Victor, there's
and at one point Rip was brought back under WWE contract and actually had guys that were under contract in the class, and I remember that was intimidating. Of course, Rip, though, is kind of a undersided blow, I guess, would get these contract guys in the ring immediately, and it wouldn't take less than a minute. He'd ding them and say, get the fuck out. And then he'd have two non-contract guys go in there and be like, show them how it's done. Like it was Rip's own pride that be like, this is what I can teach you. But it was very humbling, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I mean, all the way through that, it was Damian Sandow, Serena Deeb. There's all like, so when the spotlight's on you, especially as rotten as I was coming in as a comedy guy, and I'm having to train, and not even nearly at the level of, some of the wrestlers in there, never will be, but that's just how you had to go at it, man. And like your stomach would, like mine would, when those early days when you have to do a high spot drill and you're like, oh, don't let me fuck this up, please. And not hurt anybody at the same time. That I'm not as worried about myself as I was. But 27 hardcore wrestlers around the ring, and you're trying to cut your teeth, man. That pressure is walking a tightrope.
And I'll say Rip, he really doesn't. I feel like he opens his shell up more. But he told me an interesting story I think a lot of listeners would like to know. Apparently, when he ran into Randy Orton a few years back for the first time, since he started training him, Randy Orton, I guess, went up to Rip and said, look how good he basically said, look, I'm in shape. I guess Rip all the time would tell him he was out of shape and fat. And Randy Orton said, I thought you hated me. And Rip goes, no, I just wanted to motivate you so you would get good. And you did what I fucking said, so I never gave you shit anymore. And I thought, and ever since, from what I understand, they've both been pretty tight. I think they keep in contact. But I thought that was just funny that Randy thought for all those years that Rip just hated his guts, and he couldn't wait to see Rip so he could tell him, look, I got in fucking shape, you asshole. And Rip was like, great, good job. You did what I told you to do.
I put it in correlation. He's the last Mickey from Rocky style coach that there really is out there, man. To be honest with you. And that's when he can take, you want to fast forward to his style present tense. That's how in a very small amount of time he can take a pro athlete, like McAfee, and have him ready to outshine everybody on NXT. You know what I mean? Versus Cole, like that. That's how good he is to get guys ready. Guys, I gotta jump off.
I will say McAfee was also a diamond in the rough as well, as far as he knew the performance aspect. So I think when he combined with Rip and Rip exchanged that knowledge with him, that McAfee was just a sponge and was like, okay, I know how to do this as a performer now. And
but
was able to apply it.
The guys who are able to shut the fuck up and listen, and who are A+. I mean, Killer Cross is Disco's guy and trains in Vegas and all that, but he's said it too. And so is Elias. They didn't get it until they did 2 weeks with Rip or whatever, you know what I mean? And it just like is turning the switch. So the guy you got on here right now, JP, is the fountain of knowledge of 15 years who knows that style as good, if not better than anybody. So Beast, I'm going to jump off because I got to get the Russo meeting ready, but you guys go your way, and we definitely want to have you back multiple times to talk about different aspects, man. Beast, there's no way we can cover it all in one show. So
my pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Look forward
all
to
right, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.
Yep. See you soon, Ben.
it. Peace.
Whatever happened to that Randy Orton guy? Did he ever do anything in the business after?
I don't know. It's a good point. His last name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Thing is with Rip, which is funny because I interviewed Dwayne Bruce not that long ago, and the thing with him is just like he almost wanted some of the guys not to make it because he wanted to see how far he could push them and how much they love the business. Is Rip that way too, where it's like not where you want you to make it, but they'll push you so hard and you have to prove to him you do want to make it?
I'd say to a degree, yes, absolutely, because Rip kind of prided himself in when someone would come in to see how long we could, I guess, break them to a degree. So I guess I was one, and it's weird that Hamin has put myself in this place because if anybody that is friends with me knows me, I hate putting myself over. And that's probably why I've never really gone out and done much else in wrestling, because that is a very important thing to do. But I'll say back in the day, Rip would utilize me as someone that otherwise looked very unathletic and unassuming, and would put them against guys who came in and would basically be talking shit about how long they could go in the ring. And then they would blow up very quickly simply because Rip had conditioned us to the point. Like there were some practices that literally we would be chaining and doing heat for 2 straight hours. And he would just every 10 minutes tell us to change a body part. Like he'd announce a body part, like first 10 minutes, we're going to chain wrestle with an arm. And the next 10 minutes, all right, switch to the head. And then the next 10 minutes, switch to a leg. And then literally 2 hours straight. We practiced 3 days a week. And at least one day was just chain heat. And so to get blown up almost was non-existent for me simply because of the repetition, not because I was in any elite athlete Olympic shape. It was simply I was in ring shape, I was in bump shape, and when you're doing that particular activity for a long period of time, you just simply don't get blown up. And so Rip would utilize me to try to humble guys and get them to either quit or admit they maybe weren't as good as they were supposed to and join the class. And some guys did do that, certainly.
So with you, as you're going along, the contract guys, non-contract guys, we talked about that in the show before with Ben. It's like there's a little bit of tension there, right? I mean, these guys are getting paid to train. You guys aren't. Some of you guys, like you and Jamin, a bunch of other guys, are better than those guys. So, that's kind of a slippery slope, right?
Certainly. I think I was in a fortunate spot because I wasn't the biggest or most athletic or most muscular. I think I was more endearing to some of the contract guys because a lot of the negative experiences that I know a lot of my colleagues and personal friends have had with some of these guys, I never had. They, for some reason, tended to like me. Of course, I was a referee for a lot of this too, and I think that also helps when you have to be in there in the ring with them to be able to coordinate a match, and certainly to get heat with the referee. I mean, I guess it's whatever. It's not going to necessarily impact your career, but it certainly could impact your ability to have a good match. Not that I would ever throw a match away as a referee. I'm more of a professional, but at the same time, I was a relative unknown at the time, and you just don't know. So maybe that had a hand in it, but it certainly was there, the tension, and there was always just, it was looking for opportunities to try to show you were better than someone else, whether it was a non-contract guy trying to show they were better than a contract guy on the roster, or a contract guy trying to show a non-contract guy, hey, I'm in this spot and you're not, and there's a reason for it. And a lot of, I'm sure, potatoes and snug shots took place during that time period. And really, I guess for probably most developmentals, that probably was the same way. Because from what I understand, guys that even going up on the road as a new name were used to getting their clocks cleaned on the first few weeks of jumping in because it was kind of an initiation ritual. I think that kind of thing has fallen out of favor in more recent years. And I am thankful for that because I don't think that's really the way to necessarily teach. I could see the reason why, but I think definitely that was taking place, not just on a developmental level. I think even on the road and in dark matches and things like that too.
Do you think a lot of heat though between the non-contract guys and the contract guys? Because, hey, I'm better than this guy. Why is he making money? Well, why am I paying to train and he's being paid to train? A lot of heat there?
I don't think not necessarily as much until the WWE deal pulled out, because you have to remember at the end of the day, it wasn't OVW management's decision who got signed and who didn't get signed. It was really came down from Johnny Ace, or I think Nova was in charge at first, and then Tommy Dreamer was in charge after him, and they also had a say in that. That being said, both of them were very kind to me, and even though I didn't get jobs from them, I got plenty of spots to work as an extra on the road. So, and that I think goes back to just as much as important to know what to do in the ring. It's just as important to build those relationships, because you don't know where they're going to take you. But I think the heat was more so a desire to want to have a spot versus the desire to prove that they're deserving of a spot. I don't think it was necessarily deeply personal, but I do think there was a little bit of one-upsmanship, certainly, as far as feeling like, well, I got to prove myself. And so I think that led to having more physical encounters in the ring, maybe more so than what we would like to do as workers and someone who's trying to perform versus really trying to kill each other. From what I understand, a lot of those matches between contract, non-contract guys, even though they didn't literally hate each other, they would still get very, very physical because they had something to prove, in a sense.
Was there a favorite contract guy that you worked with that you were like, man, this is great, or he's got the potential? I know a lot of them came through. A lot of big stars came through.
It is so hard, because I mean, I worked with everybody from about 04 to 08 when they pulled out.
Yep.
I'd say one of the more significant ones, and again, someone that I know was maybe a little more gruff with some of my personal friends, but he was always really cool to me, was actually CM Punk. I remember I actually got to go on a couple car trips with him, and he would just tell stories of working in TNA and working through injuries and just this, that, and the other. And he was really very open. And I appreciated that, especially as a relative nobody. I was just a referee at the time, but for him to impart that knowledge and also trust me as a referee in his matches. And then actually in 2010, when he was doing the Straight Edge Society head shaving angle, they brought me in as an extra, and he saw I was one of the extras, and he actually picked me out for that spot to get my head shaved. And so I was, even though again, it didn't lead to a job, but I was still appreciative of the spot because it was a good payday and a chance to get some TV time. And again, he didn't owe me anything, and I've seen how I hate to admit that he's treated other people that I know, but as far as the way he treated me, he was always very cool, and I was very appreciative of that. And I think especially because I know he didn't always treat everybody that same way, so I was definitely appreciative of him at least showing some kindness towards me and giving me that opportunity.
Was Lashley? He probably was there right around that time period as well.
So Lashley was there very early on. In fact, it was a rib in the contract locker room because, again, I was one of the smallest guys in the beginners class, but for some reason, the contract guys tended to like me, and they would use me for ribs. And so the rib they wanted me to do with Lashley is go up to him and say, "Hey, what up, man?" And then take my forearm and just hit him in the chest as hard as I could. And they promised me, they're like, "We promise he won't hurt you." And of course, all the contract guys tell me I have to do this. So I do it under the hope that if he really gets mad, that the guys are gonna be like, hey, he's just a kid. Don't really do it. But instead he laughed. He thought it was funny. He goes, "Hey, what's up?" And then he took his palm and did the same thing and about knocked my ass to the ground because he's 3 or 4 times my fucking size and way more muscular.
Yeah.
And then for I'd say about a 3 to 4 month period, that was our greeting with each other. And I kind of, part of me regretted that I just did it, but at the same time, what else are you going to do? I'm not going to tell the whole locker room, no, I'm not going to do this thing and then not get over. I knew that was an opportunity to try to get endeared with the locker room. And even though, I mean, it's not like it hurt me. It just maybe, physically hurt at the time, but it's not like I was getting injured doing it. But, I knew that was a way to endear myself to the locker room. And then everybody popped whenever I'd come in, we do the thing. And he about killed me with his forearm. And then luckily for my sake, he got called up soon after that. But that was my interaction with Bobby Lashley way back in the day. That was about late 2004, early 2005, I would say.
At least he took it well, though. At least he kind of laughed it off and thought it was funny that you were doing that. Yeah.
Versus they told me to do the same thing to Matt Morgan. And I went up to do it to him, and he looked at me and he goes, "I know what they told you to do. I saw what you did to Bobby. If you do that to fucking me, I'm going to punch you in the face, and you aren't going to like what's going to happen." And I didn't do it to him.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Like he drew the line. He's like, mm-mm. And looking back on it now, I'm sure he was trying to keep himself a certain, I guess, stature in the locker room and looking like, if I would have fucked with him in front of the locker room and gotten away with it, then that opens the door for other people to do that. I think Bobby was just more of just a good natured guy and understood the rib. And Matt, I think, don't get me wrong, he was otherwise very kind to me as well, but he was just also very to the point. So I didn't take it personally, but he was also, I think, someone that wanted to continue to present himself in a certain way. So that way, you just knew he was someone you did not fuck with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. I could see that. Kozlov, I'm guessing probably you didn't do that too. I would imagine.
Kozlov, man. So I have hit that guy really hard, actually, because he's one of the people that I had transitioned from a referee to a wrestler by that time. So I actually have had a few matches with him, and he would throw me around like a rag doll. One particular notable instance was when they, for a short time on developmental, banned the belly suplex. I think the week before someone had just spiked themselves, and so they were just across the board, no more belly to belly suplexes. And I happened to be wrestling Kozlov the next week, and he wanted to give me, he goes, I give you belly. And I was like, well, I don't want to get you in trouble, man. I'm not looking to get you heat. No, I was just trying to put it onto him. And he just looked at me and goes, don't worry, you get over. And sure enough, who am I to argue? He grabbed around my waist, and I really didn't do anything to help him. And literally, I went from one post to the other as he threw me. He's a man that doesn't know his own strength. Very kind. I have nothing bad to say to him. He's always very cool to work with, but I always got my ass handed to me anytime I wrestled him. And I could tell he was working. I tell he was trying not to hurt me, but that's just one of those guys that's just so strong. It's hard not to pull back those shots and not hurt. He was definitely someone that, again, he didn't injure me, but at the same time, he's definitely somebody I wasn't always looking forward to because I knew I was going to be feeling it for a couple of days afterwards.
As far as your biggest feud, was it against Sean Spears for the TV title? Was that kind of like your big feud down there that you would think of?
If we're talking under the WWE umbrella, then I'd say probably so, because that was really the only big stint that I had as a wrestler, and that was coming in off the cusp as literally nobody. I was just a redneck wrestler guy that looked like I was just going to job to him, and then Colt Cabana came out for the distraction, and it was a surprise win. So it was a cool moment. It genuinely shocked the crowd, and so I got a great reaction for it, and it had about a month. And really, I don't think of myself, honestly, looking back, as I was feuding with Sean Spears, as I was a pivotal piece in the feud between Sean Spears and Colt Cabana. And I'm okay with that because I think those are important too, because it kind of is a red herring to distract the audience to think one thing's going to happen, when in reality, it's really a bigger arc for the story that's going to go back another direction. Because I think it led into finishing their feud, and I think they even did one of those oddball tag team gimmicks, and so it continued their story in a way while allowing me to have a nice little rub, and it really, I do think it helped get me endeared and over with the fans there.
Were you there when Triple H and Shawn Michaels came in and they're like, oh yeah, OVW for life, and we're going to be there, and we're going to keep a hold on you guys, and all of a sudden FCW is the thing, and they're gone? Were you there for that? Not, let's say, lying, but he's manipulating everybody and kind of not really speaking the truth. You were there for that?
Yes, because we were all very reassured, and because I know a lot of guys were thinking, am I going to move to Florida or Georgia, wherever the next developmental is, because people were wanting to get the next opportunity. And some guys did. I know some guys that moved down there because they thought it might be a better developmental opportunity before all that happened. But I will say, again, the interactions I had with both Sean and Triple H, it wasn't very long or much, but they were both very kind. And again, especially as a non-contract guy that wasn't really featured for anyone, because I can't tell you how many times I meet someone and I just get blown off. And I expect that. That's not something I get offended by. It's just, okay, you're someone that has been around and feel like you're at a certain level. And it's happened to me so many times, it doesn't bother me anymore. I still don't think I would be that way necessarily. So when I see guys like Sean and Triple H, who have every right to be that way, and yet take the time to say, hey, nice to meet you, thank you for being here, it means a lot to me, because I know they don't always do that to everybody. And so for them to say, OVW is always going to be a part of the WWE, and we're looking forward to seeing, what you all continue to do in the future, it was very reassuring. So it definitely was a shock. I remember I actually was still in college at the time. I came back from my computer, and that was one of the first headlines I saw, was WWE pulling out of OVW. And I just sat there in shock for a good amount of time, because I couldn't believe it. I thought it had to be, some kind of bad stooge report that was misreported or something like that, but it ended up being the truth. And it was, I think, surprising to a lot of us. But that being said, because of the contract, non-contract, I guess, issue, for lack of a better word, even though it was sad that he was leaving, I think a lot of us non-contract guys, or at least I did, and a few of my other close friends, saw it as an opportunity to now this promotion has to feature us. And now we're going to be able to take ourselves under this banner and make something out of it. And so I think there was still a lot of hope, despite the fact that there was obviously a lot of despair as well with them pulling out.
Now we'll cut it here we'll wind down here. We'll finish because we got to get on another call. But
Yes.
definitely we got to have you back. We only merely scratched the surface of developmental, but a lot of great stories on this one. Definitely, maybe a few times, actually, not once, twice, maybe a few more times have you back. But give us all the plugs where everybody can find you and the latest on what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'd love to come back. I certainly have probably more stories than I can even think of off the top of my head, just because of just the experience there. And I'm very grateful for it. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share it. So I appreciate you all having me. But as far as if you want to catch me anywhere, you can catch me on Instagram. I do Twitter sometimes. I'm often on there. I'm not huge on the Twitter thing, I'll be honest, but I am on Instagram, Ted the Man Beast, and you could also find me on Twitter, Ted McNaler. Or if you're also wanting any wellness coaching or anything like that, I am a doctor of physical therapy and do some online work at bookthedoctor@gmail.com. Or obviously, if you're looking for any match reviews, if you happen to be a wrestler, I think we have more wrestling fans than probably wrestler listeners. But if anyone's out there and is a wrestler in training and just wants some match reviews or consultations, I'm available for that as well.
All right. Awesome stuff. Dr. Ted, we'll have to have you back right here on Developmental. But thank you for everybody out there for listening. And we'll see you right back here next week for some more Developmental.